Hi, and welcome to this episode of Filmi Ladies. I am Pitu, this is Beth, and today we're gonna talk about the movie that was recently released on Netflix. It's called Qala, and I know Beth and I were super excited about watching it and then talking about it because it's kind of made by the same team that made a movie that we both really enjoy called Bulbul. So it's produced by Clean Slate Films, which is Anushka and Karnesh Sharma's. The writer-director is Anvita Dutt. The actor is Tripti Dimri. The music is Amit Trivedi. So there's a lot of the same cast and crew that we're seeing. And you also get to see Babel Khan, Irfan's son, for the first time. So we were both very excited about watching it. And I definitely have some very strong feelings about it. Mostly good, some bad. And I'm curious to see how Beth feels about it. So tell me, Beth, what did you think of Kala?
Kind of same, although we'll have to see if it's different good feelings and bad feelings.
Also, this review will contain spoilers, and there are
Yes.
some very important spoilery things in this. So you might want to watch Kala and then come back to this episode.
Yeah. In the first 3 minutes, I thought to myself, this movie has already set up more mood, more drama, more suspense, more things I'm interested in than most films do in 3 hours. Very
Yes,
strong
same.
start. I was in love with it for its first half or so. And then somewhere later in the film, I kind of got a little tired of some of it. And so I watched it yesterday. I have slept on it. I still can't quite articulate what happened. And it's not that I think anything changed in the film. I think maybe I just got a little weary of some of it. However, as I've said in other films, I really, really appreciate that they had a very strong sense of visual, of story, of theme, of, I would say, kind of an ethic, and they went for it.
A
And I,
point of view.
yeah, point of view, very strong in all ways. And I really, really appreciate that. I do think that stories about messed up artists are ubiquitous and a little tiresome at this point to me. We were talking about this in connection with Guru Dutt films a while ago when we discussed Wahida Rehman. So and I do appreciate that they tried to do something a little different with the messed up artist. For starters, that was a woman, because we don't
Yeah.
see really as many films about women artists. So there was that. But I would, I loved it until I didn't. But even the way that I felt towards the end does not put me off of it as a whole. I wouldn't say it's as strong as Bulbul, but it is very
Oh.
strong. I really appreciate the feminist messages in it, the way at the beginning when they say, like, I don't want to talk to the male reporter, I'm going to answer a question from the woman, like, that felt so special to me that someone bothered to do something like that. And it told us something about Kala's sense of safety and other things like that too, which became more apparent later on.
There was that scene too. Remember where they're like, why do you have a female secretary? You should have like a male secretary. And she's like, no, it's fine. I'm just gonna stick with my female secretary. Thanks so much. Yeah. So, and then I kind of like that kind of allusion to almost the Me Too movement in the scene where he goes, he's talking about like abuse and stuff like that. And then there was a really good line where he says, दौर बदलेगा क्योंकि दौर हमेशा बदलता है, like the time will come, sort of. I like the messaging on that. But yeah, I felt the same way that you did. I was really into it for, I would say, 50 to 60% of the movie, the beginning. And then somewhere in the second half, I was just starting to like, and this is always a bad sign when I start checking my phone. I was like, let's see what's happening on Instagram. Let's WhatsApp a few friends and share memes. And that's when I know that, you've lost me. Because until then, I was really like rapt attention. And then I was just like, eh. And then I found the ending extremely unsatisfying. So I think I liked it overall, but I was very disappointed because I wanted it to be a lot more than it was. But I mean, I appreciate the sincerity and the sort of like good effort. And I do want to see way more coming from Anvita Dutt. I think she's such a talented writer, director. I do want to see much more of Tripti Dimri. That woman has acted more in this movie than there's actresses. I know your favorite, Katrina, who has not acted in like a decade. So Tripti is a find. I love her.
Let's talk about her for a minute, because one of the things that struck me about her is she is moving her face constantly throughout the film, and sometimes it's actually her whole head in a way that's very unsettling and interesting and cool.
Yeah.
But mostly she's just moving her face all the time, and it's so engaging. And for being such a kind of quiet film, it's remarkably physical. So impressive.
She was really good. But again, I think by the second half, I was starting to get tired of the tremulous voice and the eyes constantly filling with tears. I mean, I know that to a large extent, her character is passive. And honestly, her character is a victim of some horrific abuse by her mom, like emotional abuse, gaslighting. Like her mom is crazy, and we will get into that. But after a point, I was like, I know you're meant to be passive, and I know you're meant to be like this victim, and I know that you're trying desperately to rise above, but hard because you're in this horrible like chauvinistic society, and the men are like not good to you, and that you also have a mental illness. I get that, but as a viewer, I need more. I need you to do something. I need you to say something. You don't have to have like a stereotypical like outburst or something. But lady, I'm going to start checking my Instagram if you don't. So I got a little bit tired of that after a point. And I will say, I want to see Tripti Dimri next in a happy movie.
No,
I want to see her in a rom-com. I don't want her to keep crying all the time. She's going to become like Meena Kumari at this point. I know she's only 2 films old.
I mean, I've only seen this in Bulbul. I haven't seen Laila Manju or some of the others, but the other work. But I'm fine with her sticking with like upsetting drama, but maybe not quite so much tremulous crying but I see what you're saying. I felt it really, that was not what put me off of it, simply because I felt like it was indicating the continued unraveling of this person who is a victim and is a perpetrator, a very knowing perpetrator. She does not, spoiler, she does not accidentally kill someone. She flat out plans his murder and commits it.
Also, because I'm stupid, I didn't see that coming, so that was enjoyable. That made me gasp.
Can I tell you what I thought was happening? At the beginning? So I went in a totally different direction with this film. So in the first several minutes, we see that, you know, she is a twin who has survived and a brother has been stillborn. I thought that somehow her mother was going to raise her like as a boy, but then who also was continuing to present as a girl in some way, because they did to me, there was something about her hair and face, and I think it was, in retrospect, I think it was basically a lack of eyeliner that was making her read sort of masculine to me. But also,
or at least androgynous.
And because she has quite a thin face, so like that kind of bony angularness or whatever. I was like, oh, are we doing something really interesting with gender here? No. But then I thought, oh, maybe this boy who came from the orphanage, who comes up to be a singing superstar who eclipses her, maybe her brother wasn't Willie stillborn. Maybe he was just weak. The doctor stole him for reasons. I've seen enough 70s Hindi films to know that this can happen. And then that was actually her brother.
Right. Okay.
And, you know, so I was making this much more masala than it really was, as is my want. But so I also did not see that coming. And it was, I went out loud to my empty house. And then when the camera, so again, spoiler, that, you know, he has hanged himself in a tree, and they tip the camera on the side. So the tree is here, and he's, you know, it looks like he's floating instead of hanging, right? And it's, that was so effective. The blue sky, the blue nighttime and the snow. And whenever you see a bunch of cold in an Indian film, that's fascinating, because obviously that's mostly not the setting we get. That really amplified everything. Like, that was so cool.
You know, visually, it reminded me of 2 movies, but it was better than one and it was worse than the other. The 2 movies it reminded me of, like, first I thought of Savaria, just because of the color palette.
Yeah.
All of the blues and the grays and the sort of like monotones and the coldness and the dark and all of those things. And also the kind of house she lives in, like this very sort of like Victorian kind of thing with the gargoyles and everything. I did enjoy the gargoyles, I have to say.
Where is this house?
This house is apparently in Himachal Pradesh.
There's nothing around it anywhere. Not even like a little cottage for the gardener that they clearly have, right? Like they've got a garden maze, but they don't have. But then also they have electricity and everything else. I was like, okay. I don't need realism, but it was a very beautiful, self-contained, creepy snow globe of a place to grow up, obviously.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, that itself is gonna like warp your brain if you grew up in this. I mean, that itself would result in people calling like child services or something on you, because you shouldn't be living like that. But anyway, but yeah, so it reminded me a little bit of Savaria in that sense, and also because like again with Savaria, dreadful movie, but you know, you kind of have these similar themes of like isolation and, you know, loneliness and stuff like that. Except Savaria made no sense whatsoever, and it was just such a debacle of a film. It's just visually, this one reminded me of it. And the other movie I thought of was a movie that I personally actually really enjoy, and it always makes me sad. It's a 90s movie that many people have not seen, and then I'm always like this evangelist that's telling them to watch it. Have you seen Snow Falling on Cedars? It has Ethan Hawke in it. I love that movie. It's very pretty. And as the name suggests, there is a lot of snow and it is falling on the very many cedars. And it's very, very pretty. But that is like a really good movie and I love it. And it's one of my favorites. So it reminded me also of that. What did you think of the constant like moth motif? Because it even begins with that. You see the moth, and then there's moths embroidered on her saris all the time. I mean, there's some pretty like ham-handed metaphor about moths drawn to a flame, right?
Yeah, that didn't bother me somehow because they didn't, at least according to the subtitles I was reading, did not say it.
They didn't say it.
So I was okay with that. And actually it wasn't until you just said that I clocked there were moths, but I didn't connect them back to the beginning for some reason, even though it is very clear in the beginning there's the moth stuff. I didn't, the things that were ham-handed or at least heavy-handed about this to me I wouldn't say that's really what bothered me about it. So I was quite dazzled by the visuals of this film. It's incredibly beautiful. It's got something that I feel Bulbul also had. It's got this sort of Bengali Gothic to it that I super duper dig. I absolutely love it.
I feel like this. I feel like sometimes directors and producers get so obsessed with giving their art director and their cinematographer free rein and making things as pretty as possible that there is a lot of reliance on that and not as much reliance on the story, because that's how I felt about Qala. In the beginning, the visuals definitely dazzled me and I was like, this is so pretty, and I really liked it. But towards the middle, when it was starting to lag and I was starting to get weary, as you said, it made me a little irritable, because I was like, you know, you could have spent a lot of this energy that you spent on the prettiness. You could have spent a lot of that on beefing up the story, tightening up the editing. So it's gotten to the point where whenever I see an Indian movie that is very, very pretty, it makes me wonder, where have we compromised to
at
make
what
this
expense?
Yeah, exactly. At what expense? Because rarely have I seen a film. I think Vishal Bharadwaj's films are a good antidote to that, but rarely have I seen a film where it's like, it's super pretty and it actually has some substance to it. Usually it's just this like veneer of prettiness and then it disappoints me. Vishal Bharadwaj is one of the few who doesn't do that, but that's also my number one beef with Sanjay Leela Bhansali. You know, this obsession with just style over substance.
Have you seen Raat Akeli Hai?
Yes, with Radhika Apte and was it Nawazuddin?
Yeah, that one I think is also very strong visually in some ways that this is too, and that works. It does not veer off in any way, but the aesthetic there is super is very committed and effective, I feel.
But here it was starting to annoy me. I was like,
Mm.
okay, so you'll fixate on their jewelry and give them really gorgeous. I mean, their wardrobes were amazing. And everybody is wearing organza saris, and her organza saris have moths on it. So there's this like minutia, this attention to detail where someone was like, guys, this moth symbolism, we're gonna continue it through this, and then we're gonna give them earrings like moths. Like, wouldn't that be cool? But it's like, hello, story, guys, script, come on.
So who do you think is the moth? Because now that you're saying this, to me, it's actually not Qala herself, it's her mother.
I think it's more, I feel like it's about just sort of like the artistic condition, which also makes me roll my eyes, by the way. But I think it's her mom. I think it's her. I think it's Jagan. And I also found it funny that Babel's name is Jagan, and the Hindi word for moth, is it the word for moth or is it the word for firefly? Is the word Jugnu.
That's firefly, I think.
Yeah.
Which I say because there's a Dharmendra movie called that. So that's the only reason I know that. Thank you for we have to have a deal, reference one per podcast.
We just have to. I'm sure I'll bring up Sunny Paji at some point. It's fine. Good. But it's like, it's like Jagan, Jugnu, I don't know. So there was definitely like some sort of like moth drawn to the flame, sort of like the inevitability of stuff, right? Like this is how this was going to go, which, to be fair, this movie felt very fatalistic to me, which is, I think, one of the reasons I didn't like it, because at many points I was like, does this person have any agency at all? I get that you're,
let's talk about her mom a little bit, because for a film that opens with a mother threatening to smother her newborn baby after she has also just lost the other baby.
Yeah.
And I apologize if my language around stillborn is not a sensitive language. This is an issue I know nothing about. And that also threw me for a second too, because I thought, oh, she's killed this baby. So then the child we see later isn't even biologically her. This is some third child or something. That's one of the reasons I was having my masala, who's really
I think the deal did a number on you.
So, I mean, it's like dozens of movies. So I, her mother, played by Swastika Mukherjee, who, if you haven't seen her in anything, is a fabulous Bengali actress who does a lot of, or at least I shouldn't say a lot. I've seen some of her Bengali films. She brings the drama so well. She obviously wears these
so restrained.
And these incredible costumes they have her in, with this, tons of jewelry, and yet she moves silently and like is her whole face and her hands, and she's so good.
She's perfect.
She was terrifying and so good, and that is one reason the ending felt a little unsatisfying to me, is this mother has been set up as an absolute demon, and then in the end she changes her mind and starts to act like a more traditionally loving mother to her daughter. And I didn't buy it. And it's not because I don't think people can change. I actually like when films allow characters to change and grow, but I just didn't buy it for some reason. I don't know if it was too fast. I don't know if it was at the sake of too much other drama. I didn't connect with that. And so therefore the tragedy of the end of the film, I was like, meh.
It was so weird to me, like the pacing of that movie, because they took their own sweet time setting it up. And then they there were too many scenes in the recording studio. Like, I don't care, man. I don't need to see too many songs also. I know it's a movie about singers, but you don't need too many songs. And it was all very like languorous, which was also what was making me bored. And then they suddenly rushed everything. It was like, okay, guys, come on, our time's up. Now Qala's going to commit suicide, and then her mom's going to start crying. And then at the end, we're going to see that her mom is full of remorse. And I was like, wait, what? You spent all the time in the recording studio. Like, what? So the pacing really felt very off to me. It was very like slow and then rushed. So it was just very strange. But the other thing I was thinking, because I know it's a movie about a singer, but as a movie about singers, first of all, I did not like the music. It was meh. And also, which I know is very subjective, there's a lot of people out there who are saying that the Qala soundtrack is phenomenal, and they immediately went on Spotify, and I'm like, okay, because it was kind of meh. And what was weird to me was that, wait, I lost my train of thought. I haven't had enough tea yet. I was saying something. Oh, I was saying, I've seen movies about artists or singers that are so much better done. Like my favorite movie about a singer is probably Abhiman, the Jaya Bachchan and Amitabh Bachchan movie, which is A Star Is Bornish, just because like I like the dynamic between the two of them. But with this movie, I almost wish that she wasn't an artist, because the most interesting thing about this movie was the mother-daughter relationship to me.
Yeah.
That was easily the most meaty. Like, where was the need? You like, there was no need to make her an artist, like, or like a singer or whatever. She could literally just have been like a girl who works as an engineer, or a girl who works as a secretary, or a person who works for the Indian Railways. I don't know. She could easily have been any of those things. And it's the dynamic between her mother and her that was so much interesting. And that was what was so cool, because when in Hindi cinema have we seen these absolutely disastrous moms who are just vile? The only other example I can think of like this power play between mother and daughter and this like horrific parenting is probably Great Expectations, where in the book as well as in the movie, you have Miss Havisham just exerting this horrible vice-like grip over, Stella, and just essentially ruining her life because of that. So I was like, you could have just done away with all of the music stuff and just made it a story about a mother and a daughter, and a boy comes in from the cold, and now he is the golden child, and how the daughter feels. And it would have been so much better, I feel like.
Also focusing on the mother's, because the mother's grief is what drives a lot of this. And it's not just her grief about the child, but also her husband has died very recently at the time of the children's birth. He's referred to a few times. He has obviously a huge musical legacy. She has her own music. I gather she had a musical career that was also.
But she's from a courtesan's family.
Right. Right. So she does
So
not
she
get to
has
be the
no like
artist.
cachet or status.
Right.
In essence, she really married up, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what she's afraid of
Yeah.
losing her status, so to speak.
And but so her own artistic ambitions are unfulfilled, it looks like. And that is interesting. And also, we don't see stories about middle-aged women hardly ever. And as someone in my 40s, like, I would love to have seen more about that. And I
Yeah.
think in retrospect, I think this is not a newsflash, that's one of the things that people loved so much about English Vinglish, was that here we have the fantastic Sridevi getting to be a grown-up. She's not acting like a child in a cupcake dress for some creepy dude. She's a fully fledged adult woman who is going through something complicated, and she's trying to rebalance her life and figure out who she is. And that is so compelling. And so I would love to see, this film told from the mother's perspective more than it was, and really see who she is, because she's obviously complicated and damaged by society and by life events and by maybe her own brain chemistry or whatever. Like, she's a fascinating character.
She is. Also, I thought that like the doctors in this movie were A, so horrible, and B, had such terrible bedside manner. Like the movie literally, I thought that was so expertly done, where, I mean, cringe, I mean, horrible, but also so well done, where Swastika Mukherjee is sitting in that like chair or whatever, and she has baby Qala in her hands, and she's like, what happened to the other baby? And the doctor is just like, so sorry, the baby was like stillborn. And she's like, it was a boy. And he's like, yeah. And then he gives the spiel about when there's two twins in the womb, often the words he uses sucks out the life and all of the nutrition, which by the way is true and happened to a cousin of mine. Like, she was pregnant with twins. But that's a terrible way to set them up, because now you're going to make that person sound like a murderer. They're a fetus. It was just survival of the fittest. It's called Darwinism. But he was just like, she sucked away all the nutrition and essentially like killed her brother. And I was like, what the? Someone needs to take away your medical license, because you are terrible. And then the minute he says that, you see Swastika Mukherjee's face be like, oh, what? Because now she's going to look at her child like this. Like, I was just like so mad when he said that. But also I can see someone saying that, because doctors can sometimes say the most ridiculous shit and they get away with it even now. Like, they can say whatever they want.
And especially to women.
Yes. I loved also how I like the fact that Qala throughout the movie, she always asks for help. I like that. She basically puts her hand up and she says, I see things. I'm dizzy. I
That's
hear
true.
voices. Help me, help me. She's always saying help me, and she's always shot down. And I wanted to slap Abhishek Banerjee, the doctor, when he goes, well, it could also be the time of the month. And I was like, I'm going to throttle you. Because, when it's our time of the month, Beth, we see things and we
Right, we
like, hear
hallucinate,
voices.
and which is absolutely. Are there people who hallucinate during their periods? I have no idea. I've never heard of that, but it could be, and I don't want to downplay that. But also, please don't
Right.
assign everything to that, because it's not.
Yeah, it was very like hashtag hysteria, which again I think reminded me of like Victorian books and Victorian novels and the
Yeah.
whole like, let's
Yeah.
lock her away, like yellow wallpaper sort of a thing. What did you think of Babil Khan?
I was about to say he was one. There's like two more things I want to talk about, and he's one of them. He was there.
Yeah.
He didn't. There was not much demanded of him.
Yeah.
And he also delivered not much in particular, I would say. I didn't think he was bad, but again, added nothing.
He was there, yeah.
I, if emotionally he is a draw for audiences or viewers once they see the film because of who his father is, I'm okay with that, right? Like it is what it is. Like we can't regulate that audience reaction, but I don't.
Right.
If they had auditioned this role, I don't think
Yeah.
he's who would have been cast.
I didn't understand why his dialogue delivery was so slow. Now, admittedly, I'm someone who talks very fast, and I've actually been told multiple times in my life in like professional settings to slow down because people are like, you're like an express train. Can you please slow down? And I'm like, fine. But he was so. It was like one word an hour, Beth. I was like, please, Babil, move it along.
I interpreted the way he spoke as a way of kind of indicating his uncertainty because he is this orphan,
Yeah.
that he knows he doesn't fit into any, that the societies he's brushing up against are not really going to accept him in some way. And, obviously he doesn't get the chance to be a film song star, but would he have fared any better than Qala did?
Right.
Don't know.
What did you think of Anushka Sharma's cameo? I gasped a little. I was like, wait, that's her.
Okay. I want to say something that I might be incorrect. And this might also be not everyone's favorite opinion. I do really like her as a rule. I was very unconvinced by her lip syncing. And I don't know if that was on purpose because that they're in this, it's the 1930s, right?
Yeah.
Is that what 1930s songs look like? Like they're less in sync or at least we see them that way now because of degrading technology and stuff? Or was that not done well? And I don't know. So that really bothered me because usually everyone in Indian cinema lip syncs expertly.
Right.
When someone is even a little bit off, you're like, why are they so bad at this? And I know she can do it. So I was very distracted by that. So that's all I have to say because that's all I could focus on.
I also found it very odd because I was like, one of the ways that she has ruined her face is with the lip stuff she's done. And I was like, yeah, actresses in the 1930s did not have the duck lips. So you could have cast someone who looks a little more natural than that. But yeah, I was like, wait, it's Anushka Sharma. And
it was a cute touch. And watching Qala sing along in the theater to her own song was very adorable. I really loved that moment. Because to get to see your work on a big screen must be amazing. Like I work in exhibit design, so I get to see my work physically in the museum a lot, and it is very meaningful. So to see it like as huge as that, I get it. Yeah.
Did you like the music? Am I the only one who felt like the music was very meh?
I don't really remember it, having finished the film yesterday, but there's one song I want to talk about, which is the weird one in the apartment building where things are like backwards and disjointed and like. You remember this when she's kind of, so there's a scene where she's kind of, they've gone to some Calcutta film party, right?
Yeah.
And the song is like, there's
I remember the song.
Clips of it looping backwards and all sorts of weird things. I've never seen anything like that in any Indian film. I thought it was an amazing creative way to use music in a way that was new to me, at least. And I was I really dug it. I would like to watch that again and kind of think about what it was representing and doing. I mean, it felt fragmented, it felt disorienting, all that kind of stuff, but I want to go back and see what else maybe it was trying to do, because that was really cool.
So what about, I mean, I think we're in agreement that we wanted to love Qala, but we just couldn't love it as much as like Bulbul, which was like awesome.
Right.
What do you think could have made Qala better? Because like what's frustrating is you see this movie's trying so hard. It is doing a good job. There's really, really good acting in it, but it's just falling short and it's frustrating. So what about it? What would you have improved?
I'd need to think about that a long time, I think, but off the top of my head, I would say, okay, so here's an example. I would like them to subtle up the end third or so, because it is very heavy-handed in ways that I didn't feel suited the rest of the film, even though there's plenty of heavy-handedness in the rest of the film too, like watching a mother lean over the camera with a pillow where you see an infant is supposed to be like, I got it, she's bad.
Right.
So in the apologies to sensitive ears, in the scene where Qala is on the balcony with the music composer for the film, and there is an exchange of sexual favor for her getting to continue her singing career. And you see him, and she is below the level of the balcony railing, you can assume. And then later we see that she is there. We did not need to see that she was there and then she's wiping off her mouth, right? We had it. We had it before that, and it would have been more effective, I think, to leave that out. And I don't mean to, and I'm not saying that because depictions of reaction to sexual choices that you wish you had made differently is bad or wrong or anything. I just felt like that was, we had it. Trust your viewer to have it.
Right.
Because a lot of the other mistreatment of her in the film industry that we assume is happening, and we know is happening because of what Varun Grover's character, the lyricist in particular, says to her, we know. And we also know, because we've seen the news, and a lot of us are women in the world, we know. So I think just pull back a little on the end, I think would have made it work better for me. Maybe. What about you?
Pacing. I just had an issue with the pacing. It was just very uneven. There were parts that were very slow where nothing happened, where we just kept seeing shots in the recording studio, which was like boring, and orchestras and stuff like that. And then they were just like, okay, now she's going to kill herself. And then her mom's going to be sad. And then her mom's going to be in front of the earpiece. And I was like, guys, come on. So the pacing was just, it was terrible. I don't know if they even no, the pacing was terrible, which is an editing issue and also a directorial issue and also a script writing issue. So yeah, it was disappointing. And those are very, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that those are easy things to fix, but again, guys, we like pretty movies. We do like stylish content, but let's not fall into these traps of like, pretty is not why I watch movies. I watch movies for the story. So it's okay if it's not that pretty. We don't have to have like moths on costumes and photogenic snow falling on our faces and our eyelashes. Like, we don't need that. It's nice, but what we would really like is some good storytelling. So yeah, definitely a pet peeve of mine. But okay, so that I think wraps up our review of Qala, and I would recommend it. Like, I would say people should watch it, but also I'm not going to be like, you guys must watch it. It's okay. You should watch Bulbul if you haven't seen Bulbul. That's all I will say. So tell me if there's any other movies that you saw and what you thought. I know you watched one of my recommendations.
I did. So I don't even remember what episode this was, but Pitu was after me to watch, I can't even pronounce this one syllable word. Dodd?
Yeah.
I watched this.
It wasn't, but I like it.
Yeah, it was super goofy. I really liked it. I am very hit and miss with Ram Gopal Varma films for reasons that will surprise no one. I really enjoyed this movie. I didn't expect to. When you told me about it, I think I even said out loud on the show, what a weird couple to put.
Yes.
Sanjay Dutt
and Urmila. It's just weird.
Together. I'm much more a fan of her than I am of him. I really liked them together, actually. Like, I felt like they kind of had this kooky energy. Her comedy, and no, both of their comedy was very strong, I thought, maybe particularly her. I don't know. That movie kind of switches in and out of what's actually happening and what they're imagining a lot, which really worked for me. Paresh Rawal is the gangster who's very funny, worked for me. I just enjoyed the heck out of that movie, and I didn't expect to. And I thought that whole, it is about being on the chase, and they did that really well. Can you please tell me why Urmila's introduction song in the nightclub has a giant cockroach in the set?
I mean, there's cockroaches in the world. If we can have moths in Qala, we can have cockroaches in
We
Node.
can. Does the song refer to that in any way, or because
I don't
my version
remember
is
that song.
I don't have this. The subtitles were not on the songs, as often happens on uploads and DVD. So I thought, okay, maybe there's an analogy here that I am not able to get. To be clear, I do not need set design to match the lyrics or the costumes or anything else. Someone on Twitter was like, you need a lesson in how 90s films work. I'm like, no, I don't. I got it. I got that random is a thing that happens. But the thing is, It's not actually random because someone chose to put this in the set. Now, if they just chose it because they liked it or they had a giant cockroach from some other project, that's fine. And that's not going to be apparent to the viewer, but that is not in fact random. So I'll
go watch the song on YouTube again and report back.
I really enjoyed the heck out of this movie, and I didn't expect to. So thank you for the recommendation.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's clearly not as good as Rungila, obviously. And I said that in that episode where I was like, no, it's not a Rungila.
I guess it's not as good as Rungila, but here's another thing that may not be an opinion many people share. I think that I would take Sanjay Dutt over Jackie Shroff. I know. I don't understand. I don't dislike Jackie Shroff in that era. I don't get it. I don't get what made him a leading man or what made him magnetic.
But he was so hot, Beth.
Oh, not to me.
Let me send you his synthol ads.
I've seen them. I don't get it.
Okay.
I don't get it.
I was like, the synthol ads will convert you back.
Yeah, I don't, and it's fine. Again, I don't think he's bad, but he just doesn't move me in any way. I do appreciate his current day, like drunken uncle thing is funny.
People tell me like, oh, Arjun Rampal. And I'm like, yeah, so. And then they're like, no, we're not talking about his acting, but he's hot. And I'm like, no, he isn't. He does nothing. Or Aditya Roy Kapoor. And then I'm like, just a scrawny guy. Like, I don't know, what's the big deal? And people look at me like so blasphemous because I'll just be like so nonchalant. I'm like, just a scrawny guy. Like, who cares? But what was really funny was while Beth was watching Dodd, she kept WhatsApping me. And at one point she was talking about Sanjay Dutt in the movie. And then I say to her, oh yeah, he's like basically stoned throughout this movie. And she was like, was he really? And I was like, I don't know. He just
it would explain a lot if he was, because he's very, I want to ask, as someone who dances, you and any of our listeners.
I'm a bad dancer though.
But you do it.
Yes.
Please give me an assessment of his dancing skills because I started out the film thinking like, oh Lord, please don't make this man dance. But by the end, I was like, you know what? First of all, he's better than I will ever be. Second of all, I felt like they very wisely gave him choreography that he could mostly do. And that somehow suited what Urmila, who obviously is much, much better, can do. And I feel like as men are transitioning from not dancing to dancing as heroes in Hindi films, like there's a lot of people caught in this weird era where they were not raised to be dancers. They didn't grow up knowing they would have to. Famous Sunny Deol in the Jeet, in that song in Jeet where he's stomping. Yeah. So I actually wanted to give him some credit for that. And obviously he's also not only very tall, it's like the upper part of his legs is very tall. He's kind of
he's very lanky.
So that can be hard to work in choreography too, I think, especially coupled with someone who's so much shorter than he is. But I really was impressed by that. And I would be interested if anyone with dance experience would like to comment on Sanjay Dutt's dancing, please do so in the comments.
I actually enjoy Sanjay Dutt's dancing because I think, so he is as bad as Sunny Deol in terms of dancing. They're both horrendous dancers, but the thing is, Sunny Deol didn't actually have to dance in most of his movies because his genre was always action. So it's like he didn't really have to do a lot of dancing, so it was fine. Sanjay Dutt, I think because he did so many like screwball comedies, Sanjay Dutt is hard to slot. He's done action films, sure, but he's also done a lot of famous romantic movies like Sajan or what have you. But he's also done screwball comedies. So he's much more versatile than Sunny Deol is. And so when he does these goofy comedies and he's doing this goofy dance where the choreographer is just like, okay, you're supposed to do this, and if you can do even 10% of that, I'll be happy. it kind of works out because he's goofy. It's kind of like, I feel like Varun Dhawan is actually a very, very good dancer. But if Varun Dhawan was a terrible dancer, I feel like it would work out too, because again, he has that goofiness. I think goofiness goes a long way in letting people accept your dancing, because they're like, he's just one of us. It's like when I dance, I'm horrendous and I have two left feet, but I have a good time and I get compliments. People literally be like, at parties, I'm like dancing my heart out, and people will be like, I love you in the dance floor. I'm like, really? I'm
Enjoying
terrible.
yourself sells so many things. Like if you feel happy in your clothes, you look, you've got a great wardrobe together, right?
Yeah. So I think that's the Sanjay Dutt effect. Like, I like watching him when he dances. Whereas with Sunny Deol, I love Sunny Paji so much, but when he dances, I'm like, what did you make my Sunny Paji do? How dare you? Because he clearly looks like he's very unhappy about what they're making him do.
I want to talk about two other movies I saw, and then you should talk about what you've seen. I saw Pathar Ke Insan with Sridevi and Jackie Shroff and Vinod Khanna.
Okay.
Thanks to our friend Melanie, who I've talked about before on the podcast. We watched this. That movie's wild. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, it has the threat of concern rape. Someone is threatened.
It sounds like a very avoid your movie, by the way.
But it was fascinating also, and it kind of goes all over the place. And I was texting Amrita about it, and she was like, "Oh, I love that movie." Oddly, okay. So that was a trip. But I'm always happy to see Sridevi in anything. So
right,
that was good. And I love Vinod Khanna too, so that was great. And then I also saw from earlier this year, Dobara with Tapsi Pannu, which I thought was excellent, and I fully recommend people watch it. It is on Netflix. It is an official remake of a Spanish film that is also on Netflix, so you can watch them both. I do much prefer the Hindi. I thought the Spanish was great. I can see why someone wanted to remake it. I really loved that film. I'm not just saying that because its writer has been on this podcast. That is why I watched it, to see his work. But I just loved that film. I thought it had a really great balance of the sci-fi and the kind of mystery and the emotion, and I would fully recommend it to anyone as you're if you're trying to catch up on this year's films before the end of the year lists come. Watch Dobara. It was great.
So I actually still need to watch Dobara, because since it's written by Nihith and he's a dear friend, I always want to watch it when I have time and pay attention to it and stuff like that and support my friend. But I was thinking, if you catch up on Choked, which also he wrote, then, and I'll watch Dobara, and then maybe we can have him on to speak about his films. The funny thing about Choked is, and maybe this is for that episode, but I remember sitting with him at this restaurant in Mumbai, Yuacha, many years ago. I think this was at least 7 years ago. And I was visiting India, and we were chatting, and I was like, how's it going? And he was still working as a journalist, and he goes, so I wrote this like screenplay, and I'm trying to pitch it to people. And I'm like, what's it called? And he goes, Choked. And then he explained the whole story to me over our lunch. So so when I actually saw Choked, I was like, oh, this is the movie that he was telling me about.
That's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll have him on, and then I'll watch Dobara, and then we'll have him talk about, because he's worked on Sacred Games. I do still want to see Fir Kabhi. Maybe we should do this episode once we watch Fir Kabhi, because it's still not available on streaming. It's still doing the festival rounds. Yeah, but I'll go watch Dobara. And then you and I both watched Monica, Oh My Darling. You liked it. I didn't.
Yeah, talk about why you didn't like it.
I didn't like it because I felt it was very convoluted and unnecessarily complicated. I mean, it was fine, I guess. I liked Hema Qureshi in it. I loved Radhika Apte in it. But I was just like, okay, there's these snakes, and then there's this person. It just felt unnecessarily complicated. And the other thing is, I didn't care about anyone. I typically like Rajkumar Rao a lot, but to me, I know a movie is not going to work for me when I don't care what happens to the character, irrespective of whether the character is a good person or a bad person. Morality does not enter at all, but I want to at least care. My thing was within 10 minutes of starting the movie, I didn't care what happened to Rajkumar Rao, whether he was framed, whether I was like, whatever, who cares? So it was just very meh. And I did not understand why so many people loved it. People were raving about it on Reddit. And I was like, did we watch the same movie? So yeah, I found it very, very disappointing. You liked it?
It sounds like I liked the thing that you mostly disliked about it, which was the complications and everything. I was all in, like I was fascinated by all the twists and turns and everything. And I, as we've discussed before, I never figure out mysteries ahead of the people in the film, almost ever. There's one exception, but that was not that was not this film. I was like, whoa. So I was really into it. I love Huma Qureshi. It was so great to see her. Lovely. I thought everyone was doing a great job in that film. And again, it was kind of stylish in a way that was working for me. And I enjoyed all the little, like, looking for clues, and I'm not saying I'm good at it. I just say I enjoyed it. I was in.
There was a scene in the movie, I forget what the character's name is, but I mean, we find out that he's like the murderer or whatever. But he looks straight at the camera and then he says something about chronological samjho, like understand the timeline. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care.
Whereas like, I want to, like, I'd like to go, I want to go watch it again now that I know everything. Like maybe over winter break, I'll like go watch it again to see if I can follow along like the dum-dum that I am. So
yeah. Okay. I think our next week's episode that we're gonna do is the Madhubala one. So people can catch up on Madhubala movies and then talk about the Venus of the Indian screen. And then in the meantime, if people want to go watch Qala, if you've seen Monica My Darling, if you've seen Dutt, if you've seen any of the films that we referenced today, then tell us what you thought in the comments. And then don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all of the good things. And if you have any ideas for what topics we should do, forthcoming episodes on, do let us know. We do listen. And thanks for watching Filmi Ladies.